Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation?
Mind spins in spirals like the card Cogito. I think, therefore, but do I even know? Hume said the sun might not rise in the morning. Patterns ain't proof, just habits we adorn. Russell's teapot floating out in the void. Invisible doubts that can't be destroyed. Belief ain't a bird and the skeptic employs. Question the noise, the cosmos ploys. Skeptic's eyes always peeping the fraud. Truth ain't handed down, it's wrestled from the gods. Doubts my temple, my faith is flawed. Think it through twice before I applaud. Induction wobbles like a table with no leg. Hume's knife cuts leave certainty begging. A billion white swans, burn black renegade. Shatter the mirror, the cracks cascade. Cogito feels strong, but is it really? Thoughts build castles, clouds act silly. Russell's pot spins in the ether so freely. Prove it exists or the claim's too dreamy. Am I the dreamer or the dream in the show? The car wrestled devils, still didn't know. Faith and senses, they play tricks on a low. Truth's a mirage in a desert of woe.
When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only, what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out? Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the live stream. As always, I am your host, Robert, and thank you for joining. I think I've decided what we're going to do is we're going to do an open panel chat every first Saturday of the month, and then we'll just have scheduled guests for the rest of the time. Next Saturday, we're fixing to be having, I think Skeptic Lou will be on. The 21st is presently open, though I think that's going to be closed up shortly. And then on the 28th, we'll be having the Mighty Filbert will be coming by. Anytime I invite someone to come in, I generally let them pick the topic of what it is they want to talk about, and then we'll do an interview. If it's people that I think's interested in that they have something to say, I generally will try to reach out to them and see if they want to come on the show. That having been said, anybody and everybody is welcome to come in on the first Saturday. We're going to do these open panels, and we're just going to chit chat just to kill the dead air. I'll have a little topic that I'll throw up here to talk about why some people come in. Maybe it'll strike some interest of some people to come in and talk. Am I sounding well? Is my volume okay, everybody? Try to mute it before I move my microphone. I've heard people beat the microphone to death while they're on a live stream, and they'll rattle it all around. You heard the springs and the kinking and everything going on in it. Got a few people in here already. Dade, Mighty Filbert. I don't know how to say this Rim name. Rimmers, Brett. Rimmers. I'm just going to call you Rimmers for now, man. I think I've talked to you a few times. Let me see if I can get something done with this crazy background. Let's see. There we go. Not as provocative. How about that? All right. Excellent. Good to know. Hey, you got a Phantom come in here, a few people. Chat should be pinned in chat if anybody wants to come by or anybody wants to throw any questions. I'm happy to field any kind of questions. I wanted to talk while I'm waiting for somebody to come in. There's a few different people throughout the past that has posited a list of things, such as the 5 ways arguments or different arguments. And I had something of a list of my own. There's something of the six human conditions that I think that kind of gives rise to a God. It's something that is prevalent in just as a part of the human condition that I think will always wind up giving rise to gods, not necessarily a singular or unified God. But I wanted to run some of these by you and see y'all's thoughts on the subject. The first one, the big one, is always the fear of death. Everyone is afraid to die. There's this evolutionary instillment that to move away from death is beneficial, and people are they're so dreadful of everything. When people are afraid of spiders or afraid of snakes, what they're ultimately afraid of is death. The spider is just some representation of how they are afraid to die. But in reality, if they weren't afraid of death, they wouldn't be afraid of any of these things. They're afraid to die is what they're afraid of. And subsequently, every single religion that has ever been spawned has that singularity in mind, that you don't really have to die. It seems to be the one constant in every religion. And it doesn't matter whether it's an Eastern religion or where that religion comes from. The ideal is that you are either reincarnated, you go to another spiritual plane, you go to a Valhalla, you go to a Shangri-La, you go to a heaven, something that you don't actually have to face death. You don't actually have to die. It seems to be the one thing that every religion has in common to some degree. And it doesn't matter how they escape it. They escape it in some way. So this seems to be one thing that religion has, that we are afraid of death, so we construct something in which we don't have to face it. At least not in our mind anyway. And then we have a second thing, and it's similar, but I connect the two together. I think they're very much, they have their own aspects going on about them, and that is the loss of loved ones. Specifically, if you've lost someone very close to you, and even more so if you've lost a child. When you lose someone, without the notion of a God, without the notion of a place that you can go to, this is completely uncomfortable. You cannot comfort this. There's nothing that you can say short of they're in a better place. There's nothing that you can say short of you will see them again. That alleviation, it's meaningful. So this is something that we have as a human weakness. It's a human condition, and that human condition gives rise to, it gives a place for, almost like a magnet pulls ferrous material. This is something that it purges out of us a will to create something to rectify the fact that we have lost a loved one. And what do we do with that? What do we do with the pain of it? What do we do with everything? And number three, I would say the will for purpose. We have all had this sense of meaninglessness before that can turn into nihilism. We have to learn how to grab the serpent of nihilism, so to speak, when we're not in a religion, and shape it to some degree and come up with our own purposes, our own reasons, our own things to do. But that's a difficult task sometimes, to fill that void. I think a lot of people, it's a lot easier to fill that meaningless void with, I have some bigger purpose, I have some bigger meaning. And the problem is not only do we have this urge to, or this will to want meaning, but it is personified, it is magnified even greater when we have things like pain and suffering. Then there's this necessity for, there has to be a purpose. It's got to all be for something. It has to mean something. Otherwise, all of this pain and this suffering, what the hell's it all for? So there's this call to, almost like a draw. These are the things that constitute the void that which we wind up filling in with gods. And then the number four is we don't know problem. The idea that there is this thing and that thing, we don't know where everything comes from. The teleological question, kind of, we look out, we see the universe, we see the world, but where did it all come from, man? And we don't have an answer to that. So any answer that we give that is not agency seems unsatisfying. Even when we're talking about like atomic bonds, bonding together and stuff like this. Well, but what does that mean? It doesn't give any meaningful explanation that we're satisfied with, whereas a sense of agency gives a satisfying explanation. Well, this agency did that, man. oh, okay, well, we don't need any more explanation once we have agency. It's a kind of, everything is couched inside of a agency, and that's what did it. That's why it happened. So we don't need any further explanation. So then we have that problem, and I guess I would number that the fourth problem of the 6 human conditions. And then 5, we have this personified benevolence. And the personified benevolence, whenever I speak of that, I mean we leverage our perceived right and wrong of the world. We leverage that with the power of divinity and say it's not just right or wrong in the sense that I think of it as right or wrong, but X thinks it's right, X thinks it's wrong, and then we imbue X with might and authority, and then that X has authority in saying that it is right or wrong. So everything that we consider good or benevolent, or everything we consider bad or evil, we empower it with all of this force and might behind it, so that it creates this benevolent and stabilizing force. So this is a necessity for God, for a God. It's the pull, it's the attraction for, oh, I need something to fill that void. And then 6, the curse on our enemies. The ideal of curses, to start with, we use terminologies now like curse words, but these ideals, they go back to causing curses on someone, that I spit on you, as many of the Jewish cultures would do. They would say a curse and then they'd do this kind of I spit on you kind of thing. This is something that we, the old slogan, Christopher Hitchens was famous for quoting of the old churches. We are the pure and chosen few, and all the rest are damned. There's room enough in hell for you. We don't want heaven crammed. This is one of the appeals that religions has had for a very long time, is that everything that we hate about our enemies, we get the power of God also hates that thing about them. And so when we see things that we don't like, let's say it's somebody that's homophobic and they see homosexuality and they say, ooh, I really, it's not me that doesn't like that. That's God that doesn't like that. And we get this big brother super empowerment that he hates all the things we hate too. It's just such a coincidence. And what's strange is not only do we get the luxuried ideal of our enemies will burn in hell in many of these, dichotomies, they're going to burn in hell forever. But we see this even in like the book of Esther. We get the book of Esther, by the way, it doesn't mention God anywhere in the original text. It's the only book that does not mention God in the entire Bible. And the book of Esther, it's supposedly, it's like a comparative to the king in that story, Ahasuerus, he's symbolic of a god. And what we happen is when Esther finally gets what she wants, I think in chapter 9 of it, it's that she gets to kill all of her enemies. She gets the king's permission that they get to slay. They get to kill all of their enemies, right? And whenever they've killed all their enemies, they've killed like 300 something enemies in a city. The enemies of the Jews. Then the king asks her the question again a little later, I think on the 14th day of the July, I think, what it would be. But anyway, says, I will give you anything you wish for, up to half my kingdom. And what does she ask for again? 1 more day to kill more of my enemies. That's what I want, Lord. I want 1 more day to kill more of my enemies. Not to get blessings or to be satisfied with that we're free and we're not persecuted anymore in the story. But no, I still need to, all those enemies that were against us, we need a little more time to kill more of them. So this is something that we get. This is the 6th thing, is we get a God that is against our enemies. And what's strange about this is these are these 6 different attractions that we have, right? That we want. This is why we have a void in some sense in them. What we used to do is all these voids, we used to poke different gods in them, right? So you look at something like the Egyptian culture and you would have different gods. So when you do the creation thing, but where did it all come from, right? You would have this Atum Re. I think originally it was just Atum, which was the emergent god that came out of the primordial waters. And then he created the universe. So then when we ask this question, but where did it all come from, right? Well, it come from Atum Re, which later was identified as Ra, right? He created it all. But then when we're thinking about our loved ones that died and all, they don't think about that. They think about Osiris. They pray to Osiris about their loved ones. Oh, please protect them, please this. So all these different voids and these shortcomings that we have, we used to have all these different gods that we would put in those places that would take care of this. And monotheism has just kind of pushed it all into one Band-Aid, one super solution. All of these voids that we have, all of these shortcomings, all of these feelings, these sensations that we have pain, we have anguish, we need purpose, we need all of these different things. We're afraid of death. We don't understand things. Push it all into one thing and say we have one singular explanation that it just explains all that. It just takes care of all of it. It's one-stop shop. So that's what we now have inside of monotheism. Got a few people coming in here making a few comments. So I'll start putting some of them up on the board here. But any questions, open chat. Hopefully it's pinned. Is this pinned properly? Is anybody able to see the pinning, or I could put it back up here again? Let's see. There we go. Please let me know if that pinning's not working right, though, because it does seem like I pinned that earlier, and maybe it is in the video description, though, even if it's not pinning right. I've been rambling on and on here, and I don't think it was even pinned up. There you go. Now it's pinned for sure. Anybody want to come in or have any questions or whatnot? This is an open panel thing. We're going to do this, I think, every first Saturday of the month, that we just have open panel. It's not a lot of people even viewing right now. It looks like we have 11 or 12 people viewing. I guess 10 from YouTube, 1 from Twitch. So anybody want to come in and chat, by all means, drop in. I'd love to talk to Dave. That's who I've been wanting to talk to for the longest time. How's it going, Kurt? This one stop shop. Yeah, that's the whole thing now, is we have this one-stop shop with any Unity character. But it was all, these are all, like, people want explanations for these weeks. And you see this happen all the time. We got somebody coming in here. We got Duck. I'm trying to get you on the screen. Whoop. Duck, how's it, man?
Oh, you should have kept me small. I'm chilling, dude. I just ate some vegan chicken nuggets. So I got my tum-tums working, and yeah, it was fun listening. Great afternoon. Chicken nuggets and Rob.
I hear you. So what's your thoughts on all this? Do you think when people do all these different arguments, whether it's the 5 ways arguments or these teleological arguments and whatnot, they do these explanations, it seems, to try to create this thing that it makes a necessity for, right? Therefore God, right, is what it's all aiming down to. But it seems like that the easiest explanation of therefore God is not anything to do with the cosmos. It's to do with us. It seems to do with these shortcomings or these emotional things, and therefore we need to create something to put in that void.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're really good, but I don't understand why. Like, I think the main thing that I would appreciate someone telling me is that, like, biblical thinking or Christian thinking isn't exhaustive. Sorry, I've got vegan nuggets coming up, but yeah, I mean, you can be searching for meaning or purpose, or like I mentioned in chat, you can have concerns or fear of death or finality, and sure, maybe you open the Bible and find something, but you know, your psychology is not that like my psychology, I know, isn't that unique in that way. That go find something.
Yeah, you do things like look at a mother, though, that lost a child, right? And in that moment with that, I mean, it's hard to catch the next breath, just to much less to think about what they're going to eat or what tomorrow's going to be. Like, the whole world revolves around that moment and that emotional what's going on when you lose a child. And I have found from a secular side of this, there's not a lot of ways to comfort that mother. There's not a lot of things that can be said that can in any way, shape, or form alleviate anything that they're feeling. Whereas when you see preachers come in, or any religious construct of anything that they believe, right, and they come in and they say things like they're in a better place now, they're happy, they're smiling, and they do these kind of things. This is very alleviating of that pressure. So that it seems that
well, maybe it isn't, right? And so, because you have, I think you're a really good philosopher, so you know this. You know that there's that value-based sort of question that I would answer. If I'm a grieving parent, I would have this value-based sort of question that, like, wow, what is the meaning of life? Because this is about the meaning of life. This is about the meaning of death in general. But there's also those like very practical questions. And so it's kind of weird, because obviously the place to do this isn't when someone's grieving or sad. But to me, the sort of the equation it solves itself when we say, well, it's not the place to force a grieving parent to tell us how to manage grief, but it's also not the place to tell someone who's delivering grief services like a pastor what they're doing that's working and what's not, right? That's not evidence that God exists. It's not evidence that Christianity...
Oh, of course not. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that it's evidence. I'm just saying it is operating as an alleviation. There's a pain that's there to start with. That's a human condition thing. It has nothing to do with ontology. It has nothing to do with like the nature of the universe. It has to do with that there is a pain there that is a human condition. Yeah. There is a void. And when you hear preachers talk about this, that even doing the altar call, oh, you have that void in your life, that emptiness, that thing. And people know what you're talking about. They feel these six sensations, and as well as many others, and that's something that they want an explanation for. That's something that they want a meaningful feeling for. But that's not reflective of the universe. That's reflective of the individual.
Yeah, I mean, and some of this, like, here's why this isn't like clear-cut philosophy either, is, well, because like one of the things you said in there, like it's very reactive and responsive. And so it's good to be responsive. It's not necessarily good to be reactive. In this case, that if you just have grief for the first time, it's like, well, a rational person would ask, what are you trying to do to me? Like, what, just not outside of the event and me mentally settling the event and figuring out just whatever figuring out looks like. But like, if I was converting to Christianity or something, I'd want to know where are any ideas or beliefs leading me toward, and is that even rational to ask that question? Like, why is it easy to ask that, that question or whatever?
I don't know. I don't know what the question means. I mean, in all honesty, whether you're feeling something at an emotional level is not reflective of what reality is. It doesn't seem to be. I mean, we feel things all the time. Even we've seen spouses or whatnot that are, they wake up, and I know I've had my wife wake up angry at me because she had a dream and where I was unfaithful to her or something in her dream, and she's literally angry. Has no reflection whatsoever of reality or what I've done, right?
Yeah, classic sitcom sort of trope.
Right. So in the same way, I mean, people have these emotional things, whether it's shortcomings or whether it's strengths. They're not reflective. It doesn't seem like of reality, or rather they can be not reflective of reality.
I mean, it's just not worth. It's not worth like hurting yourself, torturing yourself over. I think in either way, it's like, okay, well, if I'm in that place in my own life where I've recovered from some trauma or I'm experiencing a new trauma, is it worth torturing ourselves over the philosophy in that case? Or like, what role does that actually play? To me, that's a little more foundational, because you might have that 5 minutes where it's like, I'm deciding how I'm moving forward. And I know I need to be smarter. I know I need to do all these things eventually. But it's a good point, because it's like, okay, well, I can spend all day out on the horse track betting, doing all these risky behaviors. But if I don't ever come back down to reality, what am I doing?
Yeah. There's here's how I look at it. Like, and you mentioned it a moment ago, you cannot, when the mother's grieving or when you're in the depth of a pain, there's nothing you can fix. As far as somebody coming, especially from a secular position, and saying, there's this thing that they could say that could comfort him, forget it. You have to have this. And there's only a handful of, like, I don't want to call them religions, or closer to philosophies, that could deal with this. And some of this is, you see, like the Buddhists deal with this a little bit, with this everything's temporary doctrine, that as soon as they begin to love a thing, they accept simultaneously that thing is not permanent, that it won't last, right? So every relationship they have, everything, I accept this knowing that it's temporal. I accept this knowing that it won't last, that this is just for now. And there's this state of mind that they meditate on that, regularly. So then when something is super, super important to them leaves, they're able to, but that's something you got to do that work in advance. That's not, let's deal with it's like insurance, it's not, let's not deal with the problem once the wreck happened, and let's call the insurance company and try to get insurance. Right. So that's something that you have to, that's some pretty.
What about, so where do you, in that sort of schema, where do you put like the bigger truths, right? The bigger truth is that you're created. The bigger truth is that you're loved. The bigger truth is, that people have lived their lives so you can be spiritually saved, and that you can live your life so that others can be spiritually saved. Like, doesn't this seem to almost, like, even if you're a grieving Christian parent, this seems to totally destroy your notion that there's some rational, practical human understanding of this stuff?
Yeah, I'm starting to finally see a little bit of the shape that you're coming from. Are you Christian, or are you turning Christian? I'm seeing this converting to Christianity here on the description.
Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. It just depends how good the job YouTube does.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand. I get a part of what you're saying, but I don't think that, to me, it's not meaningful. There's these constructs that people are talking about, like salvation. To be saved from what? Like people use this term salvation, or to be saved from something, and I don't know what that it's to be saved from. The demon in your own mind, so to speak, the pain and the suffering that is just internalized, or are we talking about a real external thing that they're saving you from? And if we're talking about real external things, does this thing save you from death? Does it save you from hurt? It doesn't seem like it. The only thing that you can be saved from, in any sense, is your own internal demons.
That's right. That's right. Because your context, though, but that's why that's so important, is because your context for what you define as pain and suffering is always going to be there. And so you're arguing not just against Christianity, but you're arguing against Buddhism. You're arguing against Taoism. That there's always some process. It's always going to be a process. It's always this sort of fictitious view of supervening objects. It's always just going to be the same made up stuff. And it's only going to get you halfway there, even if it's really good.
Well, I think the pain is real. The things that we're experiencing, like the 6 that I listed, I think these are real deficiencies. They're deficiencies, though, that are a byproduct of an evolved world, right? They're a byproduct. Like, we don't just fear death being feared as a universal thing is not a byproduct of, well, a creator said, yeah, I want everybody to be afraid of death and, to run from spiders and stuff like that. That's a byproduct of selective pressure that says those who are not afraid of death wind up dying, and those who are afraid of death, there's a preservative in it. So this seems to be a byproduct, but this is a byproduct of just the necessity of living, so trying to fix this, it's strange, because we could say, well, I'm going to go to heaven, and you see like suicide bombers that'll do this once they have fixed this supposed problem, which is the fear of death. Oh, well, I'm going to go to heaven and get 72 virgins. Then you have something very dangerous.
So I'm overmining you, Robert. I'm overmining you, saying that, like, look, skeptic philosophy, and you're not running around trying to solve death. You're not trying to run around trying to solve death. And so you are comfortable with like a finitude, or it just doesn't apply in this case, or it's better because it's a smaller and better and bigger question, but you just haven't realized why it is.
What's the question?
But the question about, well, like, okay, I get told, you tell me, so I get told that I'm created, saved, loved, and I can do the same in a flawed way, in an imperfect way. It's flawed, it's imperfect, whatever. I also get told that I can't overmine reality and suffering and stuff like that. Like, I get told that, if you try to, the problem isn't trying to understand it, the problem is trying to put your arms around it. Those seem at odds with each other.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's people who are just more emotionally geared and that they're more interested in emotional ideas. Like I am content from the logical side that I live and will have suffering. I need to mitigate that to the degree that I can, but in the end, I will die. And that just is the series of it. In between here, when we have phenomenal experiences of, I'm about to die right now, there's a car coming. Do I interact with that and say, hey, let's get out of the way? But short of, yeah, sure. But short of that, I don't invest myself regularly in the emotional side of that. I think the vast majority of people who wind up being agnostic or atheists, they are slightly more separated from emotional depravity, emotional connections, this void or this need to have these things fulfilled. They're slightly more separated for it. And it's just why they're able to step out. It's like, if you're poverty ridden, you love this ideal of politics. So you like socialism or whatnot. Right. The more that you're poverty. And I think the more that people don't have like emotional investments and everything, it's a lot easier to be atheist or agnostic.
But I mean, okay, so I take that. I can take that, and I think it's worth considering. But those emotional commitments, maybe like hedonistic, like, the Epicurean pursuit of pleasures, where we're maybe even considering like, well, okay, so I have work tomorrow, whatever. Yeah, I got work on a Sunday, so it's okay for me to eat maybe a bigger meal tonight. I'm going to eat some foods I like. I'm going to put on a movie and go to sleep. Grown-up pleasure or something. So
yeah.
So I mean, it's okay. So in this context, it's worth considering that, like, this big thing that we have availability, this big thing that I can psychologically wrap my mind around, like hedonism and pleasure. All of this seems to still once again get subsumed by the idea that you have a savior. Like and a creator. You have a creator, you have a savior, and it's not like these are contentless, like abstract beings, like Taco says, but these are beings that you can go and learn about. You can learn about it in your Bible, and you can discover what you are like as a person. And so I still think you're undermining the Christian position a little bit here. Sure,
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with undermining it. I mean, the reason that I say that, there's just no reason to think that it's the case. Or there's not good reason to think it's the case. And we have like all of these religions that have come up in the past that tries to solve these problems. Like these are human conditional issues. When we came up with these gods, that Osiris, when they pray to Osiris for their loved ones to please take care of them or make sure they're in a better place, they're doing this because that's an actual, they're concerned with the death of their loved ones. That's something it's visceral and real to them. So that doesn't mean that Osiris is real in any way, shape, or form. It just means that there's a real void that has now been anthropomorphized. So yeah, I don't particularly mind undermining Christianity on that. I would undermine all.
There was Robert. There was a first reason though that people believed in Christianity, even if you yourself are not a Christian right now, or you never will be a Christian. Like, I don't need to tell you. I shouldn't tell you. That's disrespectful.
Well, I was a Christian.
Okay, you were a Christian. So
yeah, I was in the ministry.
Okay, so you were very religious at one point in time.
Yes, very much. I was a fundy all the way.
And so what was wrong with your time being a Christian, if I can just ask that?
There was nothing wrong with it. It was bliss, as ignorance is. It was blissful. But the problem is, it's just logically inconsistent to the degree that I can't find it tenably logic. It's not something that I could hold anymore. I mean, I don't doubt the idea that believing that there's a diamond in my backyard, to go use Sam Harris's old analogy, that there's a diamond worth millions of dollars in my backyard, that anytime that I'm in a
You're not
financial
being
debt, I
yourself.
can go.
You're not being yourself. If you deconverted from Christianity, maybe I'm not trying to gaslight you, but let me just say that if we are philosophicalizing what is some people's decision, maybe one day it'll be my decision to be a person, be some way, and the most of the time, you're like, why isn't it accurate to say, well, you're just not being yourself if you deconverted from Christianity?
Okay, well, here's the self. Have you ever heard of the character Aletheia? Was a Greek goddess. Truth was the concept of truth that a lot of philosophers started latching on to, that truth is God, God is truth, right?
Please explain. Can you explain that a
Okay,
little more?
so the ideal of Aletheia, and we've had some philosophers that slowly pulled away from concepts of God's disembodiment, and the ideal of if there is kind of any personification of anything great and valuable in reality, it is the truth, right? And this is why even in Christianity and a bunch of religions, when we talk about God, we talk about truth synonymously with like God and truth, right?
Okay,
Because
so yeah, and it is the big T truth, right? It's not the way philosophers sometimes round away define what all truths are, and then there's some truths. If truth is a big thing, but and so just the reason I'm telling you that is because if you are, what you're doing is you're finding where this God claim sits and where it's meant to sit. Is it the same thing? You know, it's not narrowing this position at all. Is that what one of the things you said?
Yeah. So I put it like this in a book that I wound up stopping halfway through, which was called The Christian Atheist. And I remember wording it like that, that to some degree, I cannot say even now that I am not religious, but rather my commitment has shifted fully. The personification of that godlike deity has shifted to the truth, and my commitment to it is unwavering. It is unwavering. I want to understand the truth. And the thing is that ideal of Christianity, it just more and more, it's not congruent with, I cannot see it aligning with that which is true.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's good. And I think like what's deserving of credit there is the fact that you're not defining a truth claim that we all hold for every person. You know, again, if I go back to sort of my Catholic roots or my Christian roots, I still think that there's probably these big traditions. There's probably these big ideas like, well, while you're traditionally celebrating Catholicism, you know, making fun of the drunkards in the church and going to volunteer, right? Those three activities, those are still forms of like maybe truth-seeking, truth-honing behaviors. We might not have like a huge disagreement about that, but if some of those truths are about religion, when you say they're groundless, it's just, you know, I understand your point. It's just difficult. It becomes more and more difficult for me to see why it's the case. You know, that just three guys up here.
We'll get into it more. I wanted to say hey to Kurt here. He's been in here and hadn't even said hey. How's it going, Kurt?
Hey, how's it going?
What's your thoughts on all this, man?
I mean, I think, you know, I was thinking about this after the talk about scientific realism last night. A lot of what ends up happening is that people have an affinity for reality. They want their reality to be genuine and like not ersatz and not something that's going to be constructed from some other substance. So, and some of that is just from the way the words real, genuine, actual are used in English, right? Like if you say that there's a thing that's ersatz, but it does all the things that the genuine article does and does them in ways that are at least as good or better, there's still a subset of people who will prefer the genuine over the ersatz just because of the labeling of ersatz. Right. And that's an affinity fixation, right? It can't, what else can it come from?
Yeah, I agree, but I think there is a compulsion, like there's an evolutionary advantage to knowing that which is true, right? compared to that which is not. And you see it like at every single level, even at the cellular level. Information can be wrong information, and the wrong information being held is detrimental. If you have bacteria that in whatever sense it felt heat, right, and that is wrong, that wasn't heat, but it moves away from it or is attracted to it, that is information that is imprinted in some way on it, that it is read from reality that is not correct. Well, that's detrimental to it. It's damaging. So there seems to be this consistent evolutionary development of neurons, of everything that is the mind, that is rewarded to some degree, though agreeable not in all cases, but it's constantly rewarded to be closer copy of reality.
Again, even damage and reward there are doing sort of excess work. All you have is loss of continuity or continuity, right? So something that loses continuity, we apply the word damaged to that. Something that persists in continuity, we apply the word reward to that. But in reality, all you have is a final score.
Sure. So
I just think that for human beings, affinity fixation is a really deep structure, because our earliest groups are those sort of 100 to 150 people numbered groups. And if you kept that affinity and didn't alienate those people, you were going to just have much more likelihood of persistence versus people who went rogue or violated the social norms or got expelled or exiled. They would face huge, like,
I don't think
metabolic disruption from that.
I don't think you can so the reason so whatever the game was, the reason I don't think you can justify that claim is because it's like, well, you didn't define first, how are humans actually more like primates? How are we actually like trees? We
are primates.
Okay, but we're more like actual different species and trees than we are like a supernovae or a planet or a rock. We're more like those things, most would say. So why isn't it the case
we're
that
unquestionably more like things that are alive than we are like things that are not alive?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we could make a straw man out of stones and say we're more like that because it's in our shape, but we're not more like that than a duck. It doesn't matter how unlike a duck we are in shape. The duck is alive. At every level, the duck is more like us than the shape of rocks shaped like a human.
But Kurt said he didn't think that one was important, though, right? Like, Kurt said it like dismissively.
I don't have any idea what you're talking about, Duck.
You told us, you sat up here and you told. So never mind.
No, I'm curious what you're talking about, but it's not clear to me.
I just think it's important if it is the case that that we're more like ducks or like humans are all basically genetically the same, then where do differences in religion and theology come from? Why is it the case that we can view science so differently, or we take it to mean different things?
So genetic identity and personality are two very different things, and we have loads of good evidence on this. There are many creatures that we can make clonal genetic copies of ad infinitum. C. elegans you can make like identical copies of. There are plenty of true breeding mice and rat strains that are all clones of one another.
Yeah.
And what we see is definite non-identity among these clonal strains, such that each individual will have a personality and different characteristics, regardless of their genetic makeup. So differences in identity don't reduce to genetic structures. And identical twins are sort of a proof of concept of this within even humans, right? Identical twins are very similar, but they're certainly not the same people.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that could be lived experience and everything else. It's not just like the genetic makeup or the construct of the brain where the neurons are, but rather the lived experience that, I mean, as soon as they're divergent from one another, no matter how exactly identical they are, even down to the neuron, once they begin to have divergent paths, they're now divergent people.
But that's like
the nematode data will show that.
It's still like a nuclear bomb going off to say that, well, when you simply say that humans are all pretty similar, we all have these social urges. We all use our social urges to define the sort of ecology we operate in. Like that already, I think, is I believe it's like justifiably undermining a position that we use phenomena to describe the world in the way that we're talking about here.
No, we use language to describe the world. We don't use phenomena to describe the world.
No, we don't.
Hey, let me give you a little
Unless you're
pushback
saying
on that,
that
Kurt.
like language
Kurt,
is a subset of phenomena.
We use language works because the world is some way, though, right? That's the it's like if you put epistemology and syntax together, when you integrate those two, they're the same things, I think. I don't believe in a tabula rasa, if that's what you're asking. Like John Locke's
tabula rasa.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we do have a tabula rasa. I just don't think that...
Hey, I haven't even said hey to James or welcomed him. James, how's it going, man? Thanks for stopping in.
Oh, going good. Thank you so much.
Hi, James.
Hey there.
You got thoughts on this, James?
I mean, I don't. It just seems like it's somewhere in the ballpark of things that I'm qualified to say a darn thing about. And so I thought I'd jump in and wait for the wave to hit. Wait.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we use terminology sometimes that the terminologies are bad descriptions. Like even when we started using terminologies like move, and we don't use like move relative to, we can say like this thing moved or this thing was going 60 miles an hour. And we use vocabulary like that because like we have a grounding, we have like the earth. But then you'll find out like if you work for NASA or somebody else, you don't say, oh, it's moving or it's going X amount. You say it's moving relative to, because when we're talking about all the rest of reality and not this short little area, that's what motion is. Motion is relative to. But since we're all moving relative to the earth, we develop certain vocabularies. That doesn't mean we do the same thing with touch. Like, oh, I touch, but we have some conceptual idea that I'm touching my finger, but atoms don't actually in any sense touch. We have this cloud that's stopping them. What does that mean? Does that mean that touch doesn't mean what we traditionally think it means? That's all it means. It means that it doesn't mean that I'm not touching my other finger, right? Or I'm not touching the chair. It just means that the reality of touching isn't what we originally thought it was. That's just a vocabulary shortage.
I see it as just linguistics using as if good enough explanations that people can make concepts usable from one brain to another through whatever syntax is being used, right? So it's always going to be approximate.
Can I ask a question?
Wait, one more thing I wanted to get out, Doc.
Okay. Yeah.
Even to talk about the words move and touch, they both have metaphorical meanings that mean emotionally charged meanings, right? That moved me or that touched me.
Sure.
And yet those don't imply emotion or touching at all.
Sure, they're migration from one state to another. So in that way, it's movement, but not literally.
I was thinking what James was thinking there, and I'm just gonna vocalize this really quickly. It's basically what both you guys said, but it's also a metaphysical claim, right? When you take motion of systems and you think about what this means in light of reality, this is also saying, are you someone that seeks to understand or describe all of reality, or are you someone that seeks to understand just the thing that you're looking at that time, right? Which one, and in what way, right? In what way, what is it exactly that we are looking at, or what changes, And so I still think there's a position for Christianity that, well, those metaphysical questions necessarily don't have a commitment a priori to systems and motions or phenomenon like that.
Well, I mean, the idea that we could comprehend all of reality in a universe that has 2 trillion galaxies is like not going to make much sense. We can comprehend the local scale, and to the degree that the broader scale gives us information about the local scale, then that can be very useful, but it's never going to be a complete explanatory package.
I mean, that's where I'll never even be able to comprehend the sum total of reality within my own mind. Like, just forget about the rest of the universe. Just internally, I'll never be there.
Yeah, and this is
how phenomenon, how we experience. Like, what is experience? What is the nature of experiencing? How does those things that are physical objects inside of the brain constitute or create experience? In any way, can we intuitively understand that? I would say no.
Right.
Yeah, that gets back to
Especially
the
when-
scientific anti-realism conversation from last night, because there was a move to say that Bayesianism is like not something people properly do. And I'd actually agree with that at the level of like cognition. People aren't particularly good Bayesians in their cognition. But when we look at how the neurons work with visual processing, or how the neurons work with auditory processing, they absolutely use priors and like approximate percentage like calculations and Bayesian type epistemology at the neuronal level without even knowing anything about Bayes' theorem. It's the same way your brain works by the mitochondria generating glucose, even though you have no conscious access to that process.
Yeah.
Isn't this clarified in physics too? Just by saying that we have an observed and an observer, this is already jumping out and saying that, well, at least we have a description of sort of like relative to Bayes' theorem. It's saying that when we take a prediction and we take this as evidence of a theory or a family of theories, however you break it up and ultimately get there, it's also saying that, well, we have to assume we don't have prior commitments to any one sort of mode of reasoning.
I don't know. Again, I'm hopelessly biased, because working in medicine, you're going to do Bayesian stuff literally from the moment you show up at work until the moment you're done. You're constantly taking a prior probability, applying a new fact to it, and then coming to a new diagnostic category, or remaining in the same diagnostic category, depending on the update of your priors.
Right.
And it's just the way we have to do our job. There's no other good way to do it.
Yeah.
And so, I
here's
think it
the-
completely colors my perception.
I gotta run out soon. And so I was just gonna say this: when we're talking about updating our views, when we're talking about really situating all this wherever it should sit in the world, I think one of the things that sort of matters too is that, well, if we have priors, like you should rationally, it's just very simple. You have priors about how other people think about stuff. And so it's crazy. It's sort of an absurd idea, or it's crazy. It's what a lunatic does to say that, like, well, I can consider converting to Christianity or being an atheist, and I have to consider everyone else too. That's absolutely doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever to do that. I don't actually have to consider how everyone considers, and I don't have to like be fully committed or exhaust Bayes' theorem to say I believe something. Welcome to philosophy. Sorry to be disruptive. I gotta go. Fuck the free world. I'll talk to you guys later.
Later, Duck. Oh,
I don't know.
James.
I would tend to push back on Duck's position there as well, because I just don't
Clearly,
think
me too.
language is fundamentally a social constructed thing, and there's no way to, even personally as one person, think within a linguistic structure without being part of a social moment.
Yeah, we can't help but think inside of the linguistic structure. Like, we use these terminologies, they shape us as much as we shape those terminologies. And then like how we think things are framed and boxed in. I mean, that's just the nature of vocabulary. We have to have a way of expressing things. But it seems that it's all just reflective to me. It's like reflective of some either reality or some concept of reality. I mean, when we talk about move, each one of us has some phenomenal experience of move, and that phenomenal experience of move is what we mean when we say move. We don't think of move in relative to,
James, are you a persona non grata?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Can you unpack this comment about the more you learn, the harder it gets to entertain the Christianities?
Sure. So do you mean the Christianities plural part or the rest of it?
No, all of it, but especially the Christianities plural, because I do have like one Christianity that I think actually makes more sense than all the others.
Right. So I've been using the word Christianities as a preference for a few years now. And then the other day I heard Paula Fredrickson use it on a Mythvision podcast. And she's frustrated for the same reason I am, because every time you write it in a sentence, Grammarly tries to say, you can't use this. That's not a word. And she's like, yeah, it is. It has to be. Right. Because when we talk about Christianity, it's really just it's a very vague public domain label. It's not specific enough. And so when you talk about Christianity, then there's all kinds of different ideas that are under that umbrella. And if you want to make a statement that applies to more than one, then you kind of have to speak plurally.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, to think that Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox have even very much in common is sort of funny to me because they're so vastly different.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know this, man. I want to know, people have these different ideas of what like are the deepest philosophical questions. And like, I had this ideal of God having an existential inquiry about his own self-existence, right? That God is constantly contemplating, right? But where do I come from, right?
Like Arnold and Dolores in the first season of Westworld. Have you ever questioned the nature of your own reality?
Sure. I mean,
I hadn't seen that.
I always tease Christians with that. I'm like, my favorite atheist character in the Bible is God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, which God? Because there's more than one.
Well, sure, but then that's a whole other discussion, and I don't want to distract them from the humorous point, so I don't.
Yeah. Fair. But it is humorous, but at the same time, obviously, it deals with to some degree with the issue of, I mean, there's still not a grounding. You still have a consciousness that it doesn't have a grounding, right? Unless its grounding is in itself. Like the God is there, obviously. There's no ideal, there's no concept of where did I come from, right? We all seem to intuitively have this, but where did I come from kind of thing. And either the God cannot have this, it can't have it at all. It's just not a part of its nature, or it's just not an issue that's dealt with.
Right. I mean, there's pandeism tries to address this. The theory is that there's this entity that's self-existing. It can't explain its own existence, and it creates entities in a universe so that it can vicariously experience life through finite lens, so that it can explore the dimensions of identity and relationship in ways that it couldn't do if it was the only thing that existed.
Yeah, I've heard this. I've heard it portrayed also in a joke on a TED Talk years ago, where it was that God is dealing with the existential, question by creating the universe. Right? He's creating the universe to get his mind off of it and to see if maybe it helps identify or rectify the concept that he doesn't know where he came from. Right? How did I get here? Right.
Exactly. I mean, who is he without us anyways in this hypothetical, right? He's not
right.
Yeah, he's not a creator unless you've created something. He's not an authority over anyone if there's nobody else to be an authority over, etc.
Yeah. His creation identifies him, right?
Yeah.
That's his ontology. His ontology is us.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Hitchens calls him a celestial Kim Jong-il. And I think there's something to that characterization, because why do you want to be worshipped so badly? What's the hole inside you that needs to be filled with worship?
Yeah. He doesn't even have a character until he creates other things that he can interact with. And then instantly when he has a character, I want those other things that interact with me. I want them to worship me. Right.
He's the Sid from Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Perfect. Anything I want to talk about? This is total open chat, man.
Cafe, come on up. We can hear your perennial philosophy take on all this.
Oh, Kafai. Kafai is going to tell you about the wonders of using drugs to find God.
Yeah.
That's all right. I don't mind. We're gonna do this every Saturday. I've been trying to get Hizzle on here. So I think not this next Saturday, but the Saturday after. I've pushed him. I gave him a few more days to see if he wants to take that slot. Otherwise, I'm going to offer it to somebody to have a conversation. And Kurt, I want to apologize. The first time that I got into this, I kind of pushed the subject matter onto you to say, hey, do you want to do the Yahweh and the rise of a God? But traditionally now I'm just letting any subject that they're interested in, if they want to talk about it and they have some specialty or knowledge on it, to talk about it. So I'll have to have you back on and let you pick your own subject.
Sure, that'd be great. I'd do the Gospel of Mark.
Hell yeah. I seen your debate, man. That was pretty good. I think they stacked the numbers pretty heavy. That was the heaviest numbers I think I've ever seen in Breakfast Tacos.
Yeah, I've never seen an 800 vote total before. So
Yeah.
Wow.
But
What
that's
was the
great,
total
right?
vote
That
up?
means a lot of eyeballs on the debate, so that's good.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And while the numbers might have, obviously a lot of numbers come in from him, and he probably talked it up big time. While most of those numbers would have come in from him, I knew that was going to put their finger on the scale. But at the same time, there's a lot of people, it looked like, on the chat side that was given a lot of pushback, and they've never really seen him stumbling to answer some of the questions that he's, getting confronted with.
We didn't have enough time to get to like the stuff that I would really have liked to burrow down on more, because we spent so much time on all those dumb hypotheticals. But
Yeah.
Does one of
that's
those
just the way it goes.
do one or two of those ideas like surface right now to think about? Like, you want to talk about them here?
Oh, well, so he does this whole long routine about if Christians voted in repeals of all the amendments that don't allow for Christianity to be the national religion, then wouldn't that be legitimate as long as they did it in the like proper channels without coercion and violence? And of course, yes, I agree with that. That's the way the document's supposed to work. But when I presented the counterfactual to him of Muslims doing exactly the same thing, he was like, hell no, I would never stand for that, which is a material contradiction in a debate position, which typically means you're losing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't really press that in the moment. I probably should have pressed it in the moment. If it had been a judge to debate with like actual like debate judges, not pressing it would have been a point away from me. But
well,
I
it's
do
a
think,
Mott and
like,
Bailey.
I made it clear that that's the crux of the issue, is that he's putting forward a hypothetical that he doesn't himself support.
Yeah, it's totally a Mott and Bailey is what it is he's doing this idea that, well, procedurally it would be right and correct, but and then it gets to my goal. But if the procedure is right and correct and it doesn't get to my goal, well, then that doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
ultimately,
he's not
he just
interested
wants his
in
goal.
procedure.
He's not interested in the
goal.
procedure, right? He's not interested.
And he endorsed authoritarianism early on, and authoritarianism fundamentally flouts rules, right? That's like the whole point of authoritarianism, is to not work within the system.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. It's interesting.
The other issue was the apostolic tradition stuff, where if you accept that God is in charge of the apostolic tradition and that the apostolic tradition was under the control of the caliph for several centuries, then that should mean that God supports Islam.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just, and they do the same argument with the X amount of people died for this religion, therefore that validates it. And they use this as a reasoning. And then when you look up all of these other religions that had people that died for that faith, and we have more that died for this religion than for Christianity. Well, that should, by that logic, validate.
The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom would by far be the most true religion under that criterion.
Right, but that's used as validation for the truth of the religion until it doesn't prove the religion. When the same process, it proves a different religion. Well, forget that process. That process, not you can't go by that.
Well, that goes back to the affinity fixation, and that was the other thing I wish I had time to explore. Was like the reason that people want America to be a Christian nation isn't because the Christian values aren't able to be acted on within the American framework. America could be fully capable of taking care of the poor and feeding the hungry and visiting the sick and helping people who are in prison, which is like the Christian ethics from the New Testament. They could do that all without a Christian government. And like the parable of the wheat and tares, to me, strongly implies there shouldn't be a Christian government anyway. So like the what there is an affinity fixation for the idea of the nation being Christian in name, because people want that genuineness, not this ersatz secular government that's just doing all the things Christians want to do.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a good argument that it's not, that the ideal of a Christian nation is not Christian. There really is a good argument for this, even inside of the text. That not only do you have like all of these little spits and spatters of like given to Caesar's what is Caesar's, and it kind of separates the ideal of what we're doing and then what the government is. But you also have the idea that all of reality is a test, right? That you make the right choices and the wrong choices, and then you'll make it to heaven or you won't make it to heaven. But if the choices are being forced on you, then by what sense did people choose right and not wrong? You know, it's like they removed the wrong answer from the test. Then how do people make decisions that made them into heaven? You've removed all the wrong answers.
No, heaven's fully incoherent.
I agree.
There's no way to repair heaven.
Right. While I agree, I'm saying there's a good, strong inside of the Bible argument that you can make that Christian nationalism isn't Christian. That it's
absolutely,
that it's an anti-Christian position.
Yeah, that's Roger Williams' point in his book. And again, you have to remember that when he wrote the book in 1640 or so, he was a heretic to every tradition. Like the Protestants hated him, the Catholics hated him. Every group thought he was this awful heretic, and Baptists were regarded as these, like, Baptists were regarded at the time he wrote that book in the way that modern Americans often regard Muslims, as these just unbelievably dangerous people to the body politic who needed to be wiped out, right? And the goal of the Massachusetts colony was to get rid of Williams and the Baptists. So that's why Rhode Island was founded. But by the time the revolution is finished and we're adopting a constitution, Roger Williams's argument is the norm. It's the standard belief not only of non-Christians, but of Christians in the United States. So that's a very strong argument that his understanding of it was quite persuasive in that era.
Absolutely. You got the letter that was being addressed from George Washington from one of the Baptist churches. Why he Lord?
I think it was to Jefferson. It was from Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists.
I'm referring to the one. No, I'm not talking about that one. No, it was a letter about that it disempowers. Blending the two disempowers the faith. Right, that putting the might of government or something behind. I'll have to look into it. I'm sorry, it's been forever since I've seen this.
Yeah,
but I was almost certain it was a response from Washington, not from Jefferson.
While
Jefferson is the mainstay, Jefferson is the go-to when you talk about religious responses from government officials.
Right. Well, he crafted the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, which is based on the ideas in the Bloody Tenet. Which you have to admit that as the kind of person that I am, the idea that the word tenant was being used for tenet back in the 1640s and they were getting it wrong in published literature is so frustrating to me, because people now say tenant meaning tenant and it still drives me nuts. But apparently it's a very old error and I'm frustrated by that fact. But tenant is something you hold. Tenant is someone who pays rent. That's still correct, even though they got it wrong back in the 1640s.
Wait, which one of those was the best Doctor Who? I can't remember.
You're talking about David Tennant.
Oh, yeah, that's the
one. You're holding too tightly. He's the only Scottish Doctor Who, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But he dumbed down his Scots accent for Doctor Who. I think he was RP almost all the way.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the one where he's the detective about the kid who gets thrown off the cliff?
No, I have not.
The name.
I'll have to look that up now.
Like, everybody's seen him in Doctor Who and Good Omens, but he's actually a really good actor in general, and he was really good in that show.
Nice.
I'm blanking.
Yeah, a lot of that was going on, even with like Thomas Paine's idea, was very influential. That was going on very early, but there was other little things like Maryland had some laws about the Trinity, I think, that were still going on.
Right.
That you couldn't, that you had to accept the Trinity. That if you rejected the Trinity,
to hold office.
Right. Not only to hold office, but like you could be kicked out of Maryland. Yeah, I think you could be kicked out of Maryland if you argued with or were against the Trinity. So there's a lot of these kind of things that, like, a lot of the people said, look, if we're going to make a government, we really need to draw some fucking hard boundaries, okay? We already had that because we knew that was starting to cause some issues.
Yeah, and so the thing is that, and we didn't get into this either, but Christian nationalists use David Barton as like this big source of how America was founded as a Christian nation. And his argument is just so laughably bad that historians at conservative fundamentalist Christian universities have published saying his books are terrible. Don't believe this. It's all wrong. Like, and his first book about the Jefferson lies was actually withdrawn by the publisher for just being factually incorrect. And I was so hoping that like that would get brought up, but it didn't get brought up.
Well, the section that I forget what the Treaty of Tripoli. I mean, that alone should be. I mean, I think we had every House representative or whatnot that signed this.
No, the Senate.
Just two.
The House
Senate,
didn't vote on it. It was a treaty.
Right.
So it was the Senate.
So it was a treaty, but we had, I think there was an absent of 1 or 2 votes or something, if I remember right.
It was almost unanimously.
Unanimously
ratified.
passed. Right. That in this context of this, it says that we are not now, nor have we ever been a Christian nation. So you got this.
And that was in like 1794. So
right.
It's like incredibly early in the history of the country.
Very early. So we got the entire Senate, ratifying it, signing it on paper. We are not, nor have we ever been, a Christian nation. And the idea that people will still argue with this, they're arguing against, many of the founders that were in that group. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and they'll talk about how nobody took Tom Paine seriously. And there's a truth to that, in that by like 1802, 1803, Tom Paine had been like largely marginalized. But he was a huge bestseller in every English-speaking country up until 1800. He was read widely by everybody. Even Joseph Smith read Tom Paine,
even before they knew who he was.
Joseph Smith puts a Tom Paine character in the Book of Mormon whose name is Korihor, who actually uses Tom Paine's arguments in the Book of Mormon. Really?
So Common Sense, when he dropped Common Sense and everybody's reading this pamphlet everywhere, they don't even know who the hell wrote it originally. Right. This wasn't for like 2 or 3 years, I think, before it came out that he wrote it. Do you know how long it was?
It was anonymous. It was anonymous, and it was widely read by everyone.
It went to different printing presses. It got printed in Philadelphia. I think maybe that was original print was in Philadelphia, but then it got printed.
But it was read in England.
Right.
The English presses were also printing this out, and huge numbers of people in England were reading it.
But that's why I said he was popular and people were reading him even before they knew they were reading him. So to act as if he was not hugely influential, give me a break. That's just ridiculous.
No, it's like, again, all these things are just made up counterfactuals based on the ignorance and gullibility of the population that the story is being told to.
I mean, that's where we have the term common sense. I do believe now that that's the real origin of it. It's from the pamphlet.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, we are open here, live chat. Anybody can come in. Anybody want to ask some questions or whatnot on the side chat. I'm going to keep trying to do this open Saturday one. I think it's a lot easier to keep the flow of it when we have a set guest and a set topic. But I really just want to keep at least one Saturday open. That's just everybody come on in. Come chit chat. Come introduce yourself. So as long as I can keep that going, I'd like to. But anybody, any questions?
Seriously, Cafe, come on up. I want to hear how the perennial philosophy deals with Christian nationalism.
For sure.
It was interesting. P. Mars came on stream and was like, yeah, you really did a good job on that Christian nationalist stuff to me, because he's apparently not a Christian nationalist. So that's kind of proof of concept that Christian nationalism is bad for Christians as well.
Well, when you have to argue with the definition of Christian nationalism right out of the gate, that you're going to have a problem. I think with people like that, though, Kurt, I think we can begin to expect that they're going to argue with definitions that are widely accepted definitions. And it was sad to see him do that very early and say, well, that's not the definition, rather than
but you saw that I walked him through all 5.
Yeah.
And he accepted all 5.
Right. He ultimately he did. His caveat was the authority thing. Well, not always do we accept, authoritarianism, right?
In other words, they won't accept a non-Christian who agrees with them or who doesn't agree with them as an authority figure, right?
Right.
As long as the person agrees with them and they're authoritarian and breaking all the rules, that's fine. So justice for me, not for thee.
Right. Well, and this is kind of one of the, I don't know if you were here when I was mentioning what I called the 6 human conditions, that this is the personification that we, to some degree, we leverage our own will or want into a God. So whatever we think is benevolent or true or right, it's not just me that thinks what you're doing is wrong. Right. God thinks it's wrong. So now we've leveraged the might and the power of
God. Never disagrees with the person who's talking.
Never, ever.
Yeah, people have this close personal relationship with this being who never ever disagrees with them. How often does that happen?
Perfect. But I mean, this is why we got all the religions that we got. This is why we
also they can agree with you when you're younger, and then you change your mind, and then when you're older, they still agree with you.
Sure, because you had totally different ideologies, but then you just write it off to, well, I wasn't right with or whatnot, but now I am. Now the new concept.
The God never corrected them.
Right.
God by something else. It was never the God going, dude, what the fuck is that? No.
Right.
It's always they come to the conclusion they realize, I think God actually was this way. You see that a lot as people age, they'll be annihilationist later or be universalist later because they just can't keep comprehending the cognitive dissonance associated with like eternal conscious torment because it's a really, really hard doctrine. And then they'll think I was just wrong before, but God wasn't wrong. But God never corrected your wrong opinion. What's going on with that?
Right. Your position was God's position. But you know what I think is more poignant one and probably the more visible one, and that's people's ideas on homosexuality that changes and softens and says, oh, yeah, but, I don't really see that in the Bible. I don't really, So when they condemn homosexuality, they had originally God is on my side. This is what God wants. And then when they soften to it, they're like, God loves everyone. This is right. So their idea just of God transforms to their concept.
Yeah, and having a really nice pair of gay neighbors or a gay child seems to correlate really well helps with that theological underpinning.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I watched that happen in real time with Rebecca Davis, where she used to be Bread of Life lady.
Bread of Life, yeah.
Yeah. She used to be like, I'm at gay is bad kick. And then she slowly came over to, well, maybe it's not so bad. And now she's like all for the gay people and the trans people and stuff. And I'm like, well, you were wrong before, I guess. Like, how does that work? The same thing with slavery, right? All those thousands of years, God doesn't bother to correct the Christians about what he really thinks about slavery.
Right.
They got to figure it out on their own.
Or say something about it when he was literally physically on earth, telling parables about how good slaves could be so good by serving their masters and owners well.
Right. Well, there's precedent for God forgetting to say what he really means. That's the whole point of Paul, right? Paul shows up. I'm like, look, I know it's been a few decades, but Jesus tagged me into the ring and said, dude, I've been thinking about this. There's a bunch of stuff I forgot to say. I wasn't really, clear about what I did say. I need you to clean up my slop. And Paul
came to me by revelation.
Yeah, it better call.
No, Paul says the non-Christians have a veil over their ability to read the scripture anyway.
Yeah. Sure, he can say that, but if Jesus would have been responsible with everything saying everything he should have said and be clearly in his, being clear in his meaning, then there would be no need for Paul at all, right? He doesn't need to say anything after that.
Right.
Paul doesn't live in a universe where there was a peasant from Galilee who talked to people.
Well,
that.
You got the problem of like the concept of the original sin would have been very helpful, before Paul. But it just wasn't revealed that that's what happened until Paul, and Paul revealed this. While the terminology original sin wasn't there, that's the concept. Oh, that now we all have sin in us from Adam and Eve. Oh, but that now we understand. Now we understand why that's, going on. So he just waited till Paul to explain that that's what was happening.
Yeah, but that the same verse that talks about universal condemnation talks about universal salvation. So
You talking about Romans, or what are you talking about?
Yeah. If through one man sin came into the world,
right?
and
Sure.
through one man all are saved. The all is being used in exactly the same way in both sentences.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is the second Adam concept. That
Right.
obviously it wasn't said. I don't think Paul said anything like the second Adam, but I think it was obviously implied.
Yeah, he makes a parallelism that certainly invites the comparison.
Yeah, and then we see it later on. I don't know who we most prominently see it through, if it's Saint Augustine or who does the second Adam concept. But I think for the most part, Paul was implying it really heavy.
Right, but Augustine's interpretation to me is wrong, because I do think that Paul fits within a proto-Marcionite ideology, right? So the just God is the one who Adam sinned against, and then the good God is the one who sent Christ. And the good God is like the deeper magic from before the dawn of time that cracks the stone table that Aslan is on. And that's what allows like the rest of the people to be saved and ends the eternal winter.
What do you think about these ontology arguments with goodness being that which is God's essence? And I've seen these arguments happen a lot, and I'd love to throw up that what is a part of God's essence is what is a part of God's nature is drowning people that disagree with him, or drowning people that don't act. That's a part of its nature. Like, you can't say that's not God's nature.
Killing Ananias and Sapphira for being miserly.
Right. Or just any of these things, whether we're talking about condemning people to hell forever because they didn't follow the rules or didn't believe in him. This is all a part of God's nature. So if being good is being what is a part of God's nature, then you can't condemn the serial killer that kills, all of these people as being bad. It seems to be quite in line with God's nature.
Well, if God's nature instantiates the universe, and like the universe is an unfolding of God's nature, then like good and evil don't have any meaning.
Yeah.
Our perception locally on a local scale of what's good and what's evil just fundamentally fails. And again, that's biblical, right? That's the explanation of Job, the skeptical theism answer, which is, who the fuck are you? Right? Well, if that's the case, then you can't really be confident that our linguistic categories apply in any way to God. And that includes the meaning of good, which, by the way, like a good person is very different from a good swimmer or a good explanation. Like, good doesn't carry any actual quantity there. It's just modifying the noun in ways that are specific to each noun. So a good God may not have any actual meaning in the way we use the word good to describe a good person.
Yeah. I think we misunderstand the word good in the exact same way that we misunderstood we use the word move for generations, and we never thought of move is relative to, right? For generations, we just thought, well, this is moving, right? But then when we understood relativity, then we had to do a comparison, and we had to say, well, it is moving relative to X, right? And I think that we have the same problem with the terminology good and bad. So when we say this is good, and people who do this objective ethics bit, it seems that they think that like there's this good relative to the ether of reality. I don't know what they're comparing it to, but it seems to me that you can't use good not relative to, otherwise it just seems meaningless. So you say it's this is good for your health, or this is good for society, or this is good for that. But to say this is good is like is somebody floating in space, and NASA saying, can you move to your left? I mean, what does that mean? Move when it's not relative to something.
Well, their left will have meaning.
Well,
at that moment.
Yeah, but
right?
the move doesn't.
Well, they
right?
can
There's
move
no
to
way for
their
them to
left,
say that they moved.
but they can't move to the left of the earth. Well, actually, no,
Okay.
they could. They could, right? Like if they're facing the earth, they could move to the left or the right. I mean, it's indexical, but as long as you're a body, you have a left and right.
Right, you have a left and right, but you're not moving. It's like let's say there's no objects in the universe.
I see. You're saying
Right,
relative.
how are you
You can
moving?
move
It's
left
all
relative
relative
to the earth and right
Right,
relative to
exactly.
the moon. I gotcha.
But you can't just say move in space. What the hell does that mean?
You could say move to your left, but you couldn't say move left.
Move to your left. I guess you could say move to your,
because you move in the direction that your heart side is versus your liver side.
Move directionally. So now you're just doing things directionally from your perspective.
Your heart is on the left side of your body, so whatever's on the left side of your body go to that direction.
Right. So but even then, the point is, like, we use the word good and we like use it as it's not attached to something, in the same way that for generations here on earth, we use the word move, or I'm going 50 miles an hour. And then when we start thinking about things at a deeper level, or when we're talking about in space, we're like, that terminology just will not do anymore. It's not sufficient because it's not ground, like everybody's not talking about everything relative to the earth. So I think what's going on is people use good, and what they're doing is they're attaching it to something subconsciously, right? They're attaching it to, human well-being or flourishment of society.
No, but it's attached to the noun that it's modifying, right? A good swimmer can be a bad person.
Right. But when somebody says that's not good, like, what does that mean? That's not good for what, right?
Yeah, right. So you can be an excellent swimmer and a terrible person, and they don't like really interact. So if you're an excellent person and a terrible swimmer, they also don't interact, which means the words excellent and terrible don't have any non-indexical meaning in those sentences.
Right. But that's the whole point. Like, what's his name? Zoran, whenever I was talking with him about this, he kept saying this over and over. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. He kept saying that scientists can prove what is good. And then he never said anything else. I'm like, good for what?
He's using a utilitarian framework, which I think as long as you bracket like actual ontology, you can make an argument for utilitarianism. For me, it ends up failing. Sure. You can make that argument, but you have to be arguing, given these sets of priorities, hypothetically, if we hold to those priorities, then we can say within that frame, these things are all good. And I agree, right?
There's a good utilitarianism. Right.
There could be a good chess move.
That's the point I was making for him. Yeah, there is a good chess move, but you can't make to win the game. I'm sorry. There is a good move towards the goal of winning the game. But to say moving this piece to this location is good, God, like, fucking good for what? What are you talking about? It's good for winning the game if that's your goal.
Sure. And this happens throughout the Bible too, right? If we talk about utilitarianism for moral judgments, the interest of God throughout the entire Bible is that people are evaluated as valuable or not valuable based on whether or not they're useful for the utility of his ego.
Right.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why he said it is good, right? When he made it, like, what does that mean when he said it's good? It's like, this is what I wanted. That's basically all that statement says. This is good. That's just James, what I wanted.
Your point is so strong. Have you ever read the book by Antonio Damasio, Descartes' Error?
Descartes' Error? No, I have not. I'm going to look at it right now.
It's such a great book, and I do strongly recommend anybody who hasn't read it to read it. It's a fantastic book. But the point he makes there is, of course, that any choice someone makes or any reason that they give for something is always going to come from like their emotional salience for that concept, because they have a body and their body will focus attention and become more aware of things that are going to be productive for like persistence and in that specific body. And so what you can see there in the Hebrew scriptures is that this God just wants his group of people and their amount of land to keep increasing. And he does not give any kind of universal ethic anywhere in like the main early narrative about the Exodus and the start of the United Kingdom and the monarchy. He just wants more land and more people under his bailiwick, because he's the son of El Elyon, the God Most High, and the land has all been divided up amongst the sons of El Elyon, and he wants a bigger share.
The Jews would give you some pushback on this with the 7 laws of Noah kind of concept, which I think is in the Talmud, and I think we get a little bit they're not clear in like Exodus text or whatnot, but I'm just saying Jews would give you pushback that we did get really early kind of And I forget what the
Yeah,
damn
but those are
seven
laws
of
that come
Noah
from
are.
El. Those are not laws that come from Yahweh. That's what the Marcionites pointed out. That's the whole Marcionite structure.
Okay, we
The
got to do
rules
this
from
Marcionite talk
are
at
the
some point.
Noahide code, and it's the Levitical law and the Mosaic code that were from Yahweh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all seems like it's absolutely ridiculous because you have the Mayat, obviously. They're talking about them being persecuted and being prisoners of Egypt for 400 years. Everything they knew about morality would have came from the Mayat, right? Every law that they... everything short of keep the Sabbath day holy, like they already had this.
There's no Sabbath day until the Babylonian contact. The Babylonians are the ones who
that's
are the
totally
etymological origin of Sabbath.
Sure, but that's why they get the 7 days from the constellations and all. But if there were,
it's embarrassing to me to admit this, but Adventism, Adventism literally tries to argue that the reason for the Exodus is because the Pharaoh wouldn't let the Jews keep Sabbath. And that is like 100% found nowhere in the text of the Bible. Not once. Like there's
just
no
making
way
shit up, man.
Just making it up. So that's hilarious to me. But yeah, no, Sabbath comes from the Babylonians, unquestionably.
Yeah, oh, no doubt about it. But the thing is, if they're talking about like the 10 Commandments being passed down as if this was some moral law, it's not like they would be shocked, even if this story was completely true, and like the 10 Commandments got handed down to them. None of these are.
No, remember it's 15.
Revolutionary. Like, oh yeah, that's funny.
the history of the world.
When these, yes, that's perfect. But with the drop tablet. But yeah, when these came down to them, like nobody would be like, oh, this is new information. Like no one in that group would think that, because everything they're hearing here, short of the keep the Sabbath day holy, they've heard every one of these and more already from the Mayat, and they've been taught them their entire life, if the story is true.
Egyptian religion and philosophy were as old to the people of the Exodus, if they existed, which they almost certainly didn't, but if they existed, they were as old to the people of Exodus as Christianity is to us.
I don't know if that's quite true, because Christianity is now 2,000 years.
If you dated at 1300,
but the Mayat specifically, Kurt.
Huh?
The Mayat specifically.
Oh, the Ma'at?
Ma'at, the 40.
I won't say the whole understanding of Ma'at, but so what? Because modern Christianity is not exactly first century Christianity either, right?
Fair.
Egyptian religion and philosophy were as old to people of the Exodus as Christianity is to us.
Yeah. What's even funnier is now Christianity has been around longer than Yahweh was before, right? Before Christianity started. I mean, at best,
much longer.
Yahweh worship was around 1,000 years, right? So it was around 1,000 years BC. And then we got Christianity's now been here so we've now had the paradigm of Christianity longer than we did have the pre-Jewish paradigm of.
But I'm going to say that the monolatrous, even the monolatrous Yahweh, actually is not the norm in Judaism, even as late as 500, because the Elephantine papyri clearly show polytheist worship of Yahweh in Egypt during the Persian period. Have you seen that
text? No.
So the Elephantine group were a group of Jews. They were absolutely Jewish. And they were living in Egypt under the Persian Empire while there was like Persian interaction with Egypt. They wrote in Aramaic, not in Hebrew, and they wrote to Jerusalem to say, we want to build our own temple. And what we want is to build a temple to Yahweh and another to Anat Yahu, who is...
Is this the Elephantine papyrus?
Yeah, right. Elephantine, right. So they're not worshiping even a monolatrous version of Yahweh at that point. And this is one of the key points that like Gad Barnea and Yonatan Adler use to show that what we think of as Judaism doesn't exist until the Hellenistic period. Like it's a post-Alexander phenomenon. It draws from strains of thought and text that existed prior to the Hellenistic period, but it didn't cohere into a like standard belief system until the time after Alexander. And that's like very counter to the narrative of the Hebrew scriptures as we have them, right? It would mean that Judaism as Judaism as we understand it was only several centuries old when Christianity formed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most scholars put some of the older, like, what's the oldest one? Is it priestly sourced? Is it the Yahweh?
No, well,
sourced?
Job, I think, is considered to be the oldest text.
No, Job is not. No, I'm telling you, I think
It's
that's
a single
Persian.
book. No. There's strains within the documentary hypothesis of the Torah that might be more Paleo-Hebrew and older than Job.
Yeah,
but they're very small.
But as a single book, yeah, maybe as a single book.
Well, even maybe. Job isn't a single book because the opening and the closing are late. The central text is the single book that's the oldest. So I guess actually you're probably right.
Yeah, I think they're putting that.
If we look for a single episode
of writing. Century.
Job, I think Job is considered 8th century.
I don't know. I know I used to truly think this. And then I saw something on Dan McClellan where he was talking about it. And he's saying, like, most scholars are now saying that they don't put it. They put it coming out of a Persian error or something.
Well, I don't think it's as a final text that includes the opening and the closing. I agree with that. I think, and it's possible that I'm just completely wrong and it's archaized. Like my understanding was like the Hebrew constructions and all that were more archaic, and so it was placed into a older stratum. But again, like Joseph Smith's Book of Mormon is deliberately archaized so that it looks like it was written in a different era. And that's certainly possible that analysis has been done.
Yeah, I think I got this one, Kurt. This is the first one. It's this, they're dating, the critical scholarship is generally dating it from the 6th to the 4th century BCE. They're not dating it any further back.
So it's just deliberately archaized. That's totally sensible. But still, the theology of it isn't really consistent with like the Jewish understanding of Yahweh as it becomes later. And there's no knowledge within the text then, even in that era of the Garden of Eden or the fall of mankind is expressed in Genesis and all of that.
Yeah, I don't think that it has any knowledge of it, or if it does, it just doesn't, mention it. What's your thoughts on Esther not having any mention of God in it?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier in the chat. Esther, Jonah, and Ruth. They're all Hellenistic era texts that try to Catholicize the Hebrew scriptures to non-ethnically people. That's the purpose of all of those. And in early Christianity, Jonah was the biggest text. Jonah is depicted much more often than any vignette from the Gospels in early Christian iconography. So Jonah was a critical text for the early Christians.
Yeah. And I think there were some maybe the Essenes stuff, or maybe some of that we already had some latching on to, because there's already this agreement in this kind of apocalyptic. So we don't know what kind of intertestamental works that they're trying to latch on to that they think is in alignment with their Christian ideology. A lot of that's probably going on too.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's like I hold to the Eusebius model. I do think there were first century Christians. I just don't think that they would have known that they were Christians.
Yeah.
Because Eusebius says that Philo and the Essenes and the Therapeutai were the first Christians. Well, okay, I'll agree with Eusebius there. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. And like if you look at the Qumran documents, I don't know if the Qumran documents are exactly what Josephus was talking about when he said Essenes. They might be a different group, but they have communal meals, they have community property, their emphasis on baptism and washing is like huge. I don't see a lot there that's discontinuous with what becomes 2nd century Christianity.
Yeah.
For me, it's hard to say when Christianity began. I did hear recently somebody was talking about that one of the gospel writers actually drew from Josephus to write some.
All of the gospel writers drew from Josephus, because Mark definitely did.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a little.
If Mark definitely drew from Josephus, then all the gospel writers did, because all the gospel
if Mark did, 100% everybody.
Well,
did.
Yeah, sure, automatically.
So it rises and
Again.
falls on whether you can establish that Mark drew on Josephus. But I think
Right.
I
we can
agree.
establish it
Right,
easily.
but I think it's only arguable to say that Christianity is even in the Christian Bible, right? Because
Modern Christianity, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So, but my understanding is that the Jesus of the lore was that he thought he was just clarifying Judaism and improving it, cleaning it up, right, getting it ready for the kingdom. That he wasn't trying to make some new religion to replace Judaism with.
Yeah, I mean, if you hold to my understanding of the historical Jesus was just within the standard apocalyptic prophetic tradition. He was just trying to turn people away from their wrongful ways, and was not substantially different than a prophet like Ezra or a prophet like Jeremiah.
Robert, you look uncomfortable with that. Do you want to say something?
No, I know that me and Kurt have a little disagreement on like the actual historicity of Jesus, and I don't know really how to suss the whole thing out, but I think that Jesus was based on an actual person. But I want to caveat that.
So do I.
That we know almost nothing about that actual person.
Yeah.
We have no.
I'm in agreement with you. There's no disagreement.
I didn't know how much like mythicism you were into. You gave me a lot of mythicism kind of vibes in the past, but I don't know to what degree we know anything about that person. Like obviously what we're seeing is all this conflation, all this confabulation, and everything's getting layered onto. And we see it even as late as like John with the damn story about the woman where he just looks away and he's drawing in the sand. And, we know that this wasn't even in the original text. So we know that people are still stacking shit on as far as building the character of Jesus, even this late in the game.
Right.
So
all the gospels we have
actually
are
there, we don't know.
Authored. Yep. All of them are multiply authored. All of them have significant redaction that's taken place prior to their fixation in the text that we can see the seams of. It's very obvious.
Sure. I mean, I have my own theory. I know why I lean historicist, but it's not the usual reasons. So for me, when I look at the stories, I don't feel like the writers were all that good at character development or making a character have depth. And it seems to me that based on modern understandings, modern understandings of like mental illness and the way that it manifests in a person's life, when we look back at these stories, to me, it reads like a tragically mentally ill Jewish religious fundamentalist that I'm sorry, like I just think that's it. I think they had schizophrenia. He was bipolar. He was manic. I think he was self-medicating with the wine. I think he had a fractured psyche and convinced himself that the voice in his head was his real dad. Screw that Joseph guy or whoever the dad would have been, right? And to me, it seems like they lacked the knowledge of mental illness and how that manifests in a person's life to be able to create a character with that kind of depth. And that's why I think a real person bleeds through the story, some pun intended. And for this reason, that's why I'm a historicist, because I think that they just lack the writers lack the ability to make a character that maps on to our modern understanding of mental illness had they not been drawing from an actual mental illness or mentally ill guy's life.
Let me push back.
Sure.
First of all, Objective Ethics, how's it going, man?
Oh, fantastic. I was just listening to you guys talk about the dating some of the Old Testament books, and I have something here on my coffee table you guys might find interesting, but go ahead and finish your thought and then I'll mention it.
Well, the reason that I would push back on that is because we don't know what parts are reflective of an actual character or not. So like these grandiose ideals of being the son of God or being the actual personification or representation of God, we don't know that those were not also parts of the character that was projected onto him, that it might not have been the actual character. What we might have had was more like a rabbi character that is a revolutionary, and that he's pushing a lot of great concepts and these kind of reform concepts, but it might not be something that there's some kind of a mental illness or he sees or talks with. None of that may be the case. I mean, we already know that like in Mark, where he goes up and he prays and he's tempted by, like no one's there, but we have the whole damn prayer somehow and it's just him, right? So we already know that these things are being projected onto him. So I don't know that there's a mental thing going on. It could be that we have slowly and surely had these kind of characteristics, like talking to God or being a representation or an embodiment of, that these are all just things that are put on him later.
Oh, yeah, that's entirely possible. It's the reason why I lean in the direction of thinking this. I don't know it, and I'll admit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my pushback would be different. My pushback would be just based on literary analysis, right? So there's a Jesus in Mark, and that Jesus in Mark is different than the Jesus in Matthew. And that Jesus in Matthew is different than the Jesus in Luke, and the Jesus in Luke is different than the Jesus in John. And if you take them all as one story, then yeah, he looks like he has mental illness and is fucked up in the head. But if you take each one individually as a story one guy wrote, then they actually are relatively coherent from within each text.
Yeah.
They are just trying to accomplish very different things, and so they look very different. Like every author of a Superman comic has a different Superman in mind.
Well, sure, but if just the individual claims by themselves, if anybody today said, I knew a guy that heard voices in his head, none of us would stop and say, oh, well, did the voices identify as God? Because if they did, then he probably wasn't crazy. Like we wouldn't like hold that amount of charity out for him. And so there's a lot of individual claims that I'm like, I don't know how to explain this except in the context of mental illness, unless it's not meant to be taken literally.
Yeah, I don't think it's meant to be taken literally. And in fact, John is very clearly, in my opinion, not meant to be taken literally. I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with the story of Eunostus the Blessed, James?
Yeah.
So I think that most of the Johannine lectures and speeches are just old Platonic narratives that got rebaptized as Jesus said. And then they just get put directly into John.
Well, in fairness, though, he used spit to heal people in 3 of them. So that's part of the thing that he did.
That's from Josephus, dude. Yeah. That's Josephus wrote about that, and they took it from Josephus.
Objective Ethics. What's up? What'd you have? What's the book you're talking about, man?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with a guy named Matt Baker. He has a channel called Useful Charts. He does a really good job with this stuff. I think I'm surprised if you guys hadn't come across him before, because he's got so much good stuff out there. But I'm into visual stuff, and so this guy makes these charts basically just to convey different ideas, and he does such a good job with it. They're just visually really appealing. And one of his books, he is a PhD scholar, but I don't know off the top of my head if he's a historian. He's not a biblical scholar, but he isn't an Orthodox Jew, so he definitely dives into religion a lot. And he's got a book he put out called Timeline of the Bible, and it's really well done, and it covers Old Testament to New Testament, and he bases this stuff off of critical scholarship. He's really well known for being in line with critical scholarship, so you could take it for what it's worth. But he puts the book of Job right around, let's say, like 360 to 400, probably not even as late as 400.
Wow.
Before the Common Era. So that's pretty new compared to some of the other books. The entire, the books of the law, he puts into like basically the Babylonian exile period. So most of a lot of the Old Testament stuff that we think of, like with the priestly source and all that stuff, the documentary hypothesis, all that formulates after the Babylonian exile, or during or after the Babylonian exile, heavily influenced by the Persian period.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's so much Zoroastrianism in the Exodus story that it's almost impossible to postulate that it came from like a Levantine source.
Yeah, but Zoroastrianism was considerably old already.
Yeah.
He does say that there are basically 2 lines of thought that influence, the first 5 books. You've got the southern origin stories centered on Abraham, and then the northern origin story centered on Moses. He says that goes back to like maybe the 900s to 800s before the Common Era. So some of the origins of these actually are pretty old, but not much of it. And then of course the Proverbs and Psalms, some of that can be, bits and pieces of that can be extremely old as well. But none of this stuff gets formulated, almost none of it, I should say, until basically Assyria.
Right. Yeah. But like something like Deuteronomy 32, the Song of Moses, could be potentially much, much older. Sure.
Yeah, when I talk to atheists about this, they always misrepresent my position and say, oh, you think that everything was just made up in, the 3rd or 4th century. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the complete works that we have don't come around, don't show up until this period, at least the Persian period for the most part. But I'm not saying it just got invented then, because a lot of this information does harken back to a much older time.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, Gamirkan gets caricatured a lot. Like that is Gamirkan's position was not that these were constructed out of whole cloth in the Hellenistic period. It's that they were redacted and turned into a form that is known as the Torah at that time.
Right.
Let's
Exactly.
take this question on right quick, y'all, and get your thoughts on the subject, because this is an interesting question from Dave Murphy here. Do any of the hosts identify as agnostic, atheist with respect to God concept in general, or do they hold positions that God does not exist and are ready to defend that position? I'm going to tell you now, I think that there can be mutually exclusive incompatibilities. If somebody says there's a cubical sphere, obviously that thing can't exist. If somebody says there's an all-knowing God that condemns people for not knowing that the character Jesus, that seems to be completely incompatible with the all-knowing, all-loving God. The biblical God, I would say 100%. It's just not fucking possible. It's just not possible. Whereas would I say that no God can exist whatsoever? I would never say that. I don't know that any God is completely logically incoherent.
I mean, I just take a nominalist view that the word God in English means either the Muslim or the Christian God 99.9% of the time that it's being used. And I don't believe that that God is possible. So I will take a Gnostic atheist position in regard to that God and just be comfortable that I'm doing perfectly good linguistic work. Like the word water has semantic range, but I'm just going to say water in the common way that people mean water and expect people to understand me.
Well, and just a caveat on that, just to piggyback that, we use terminologies like when they talk about God creating the universe in the Bible. I think in the Greek, when it's said, it uses the word cosmos. And the thing is, like, cosmos means the known world at the time, which was a very small world. Right. It was very small and relative. So when we say this God is the creator of this world, he's as small as we imagined our knowable world. Right. And then as the world gets bigger, now God is getting bigger because God created a now even bigger and bigger world. But originally all these gods, when they made the universe, the terminology that was being used was that they just made the world, but that this is just all that we knew. But now we translate like cosmo from the Greek, or I forget the Hebrew word, we translate it now as the universe. So now he's the creator of the universe, but this is linguistic.
But the making in Genesis 1:1 is making like we make a table. It's taking pre-existing stuff and turning it into some different
Yes, it's ex
order.
materia for sure.
The earth and the water and the air all have to exist for God to speak.
Absolutely. It's all ex materia. There's no ex nihilo concept in the entire Bible.
Right.
Agreed. Right. So I'll agree with both of those ideas. Hello, Simon Spunk. How are you?
Hi, Simon.
Hello. Oh, I don't know why my camera's not working.
James, what do you think about agnostic atheism?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm a strong atheist. I believe there are no gods. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a definition of God, of course, which is a creator agent with supernatural powers.
When you say God and you say prime mover, I don't think there's any good reason to think there is one, a prime mover.
Well, it's
that's what you're calling God.
Yeah, I mean that's the creator bit for me, and I deny that that's a good thing. You can just get rid of that by Occam's razor. It's simpler to think that the universe created itself rather than
or always was in some sense.
Or always was. That's another option as well. And those two things are simpler than saying there is something extra universal which created the universe.
Yeah.
Which I'm not even sure what that means, So, but anyway, I mean, like, I could give you 100, well, not 100, but I could give you 4 good arguments as to why that's, you can say for certain, well, I say, no, not for certain. You could say that it's highly likely that there is no God. And I don't think that means that I have to be agnostic about some part of it. Right. I just don't know what you mean by God if you're going to, express something which is in that last smidgen. Right. God doesn't mean anything if you think. I don't think pantheist is a coherent viewpoint.
then everything is God, and then what the hell does God even mean at that point?
Exactly. You may as well just say, well, universe is the universe.
Yeah,
I mean, the position arises because Spinoza didn't want to be killed, and I totally get
exactly.
why Spinoza did not want to be killed. So I'm
Yeah.
perfectly comfortable with his move then. But if he was alive today, I don't think he would be worried about being killed, and he would just say, "No, of course not."
Yeah, I agree.
It was only 60 years prior to Spinoza that we had the last gentleman that was executed by the church.
Right.
It was the gentleman that called the church the Leviathan. I'm trying to think of his name. I think he was burnt at the stake, but I think it was within 60 years of
Maybe
Spinoza.
John Locke.
No, it's not John Locke.
Okay.
This is pre-Spinoza. I want to say about 60, 70 years before Spinoza. But John Locke, I think he died of natural causes. He was never strung up.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. There was a French guy, maybe. There was a French priest, which after he died, he was his book was found in his possession, or he'd written a book and it was found by his girlfriend, and it was basically the first atheist manual.
Huh.
But he'd been a priest all his life, ministering to everybody, and he said, "Oh, I haven't believed it for 20 years or something, you know. So I wrote this book, you know, but obviously could never publish it. So it's quite interesting."
Yeah. So I don't think we hear from objective ethics about what they think about God.
Yeah, I tend to think I call myself an agnostic because two reasons. One, I neither believe nor disbelieve, but it would really depend on how we're defining God. Because if it's a supernatural thing, I don't think if it can't be tested and observed, then I don't think we can say one way or the other. So I actually don't think that it's possible to know, which is where I get the agnosticism from. But it would be fair to call me not just an atheist, but even maybe hard atheist would you introduce specific God claims, because I completely reject many of the organized religions. And the reason I don't refer to myself as an atheist is because the same reason I don't refer to myself as an anti-Santa Clausist or an anti-fairyist or something else, because I literally to me, they're so nonsensical and ridiculous. I don't even take those claims seriously enough to attach a label to myself for it. So I only consider God to be something that would be supernatural, something outside of what we can measure and test, because anything else is just going to be a natural explanation, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a little bit of just push back forward about the term atheist also. So we have even in there may, I don't know what the number split is, but a lot of people see atheist as saying that they have a position in the affirmative that a God is not, whereas many atheists, and I think the majority, though I'd love to see a poll on it, think that atheist is just not holding a position in the affirmative of that there is a God. And I tend to back the second. I just don't hold a position in the affirmative of, I don't have an active belief that X is a thing.
Right. I just want to add two little points real quick. One, I would argue that it's not even possible that an entity deserving of the title because it's a very reverent title, and no entity deserving of that title could even possibly exist. So if there's a universe creator, they still don't deserve the title. We shouldn't be calling them that. And then the other thing is, like, the word supernatural doesn't mean anything at all. So I don't even use it. It's not even part of the discussion that I would normally have.
Supernatural didn't exist in English until like the 17th century. It's not a primitive concept to Christianity, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. We don't have much longer. I'm maybe wrapping it up here. If anybody had it, this free will question is just one of the things. I think everybody has covered this to some degree. They've talked about it somewhere. Kurt, you've probably had free will discussions. I imagine all of us have had these free will conversations, specifically around suffering too. That's the major pushback, is that that it happens. I think JL had a conversation with somebody, and we was talking about suffering and the tree. For people that are literalists, I mentioned this on one of JL channels in the chat. Because the guy was saying, well, we had suffering because of the disobedience, but then the thing is, was the tree not going to be an option, or why put the tree there? It seems like we were always meant to do this thing. Otherwise, the tree wouldn't have even been put there. Would we have lived forever if not for the tree? I mean, what's the claims?
My argument against Yeah, my argument against free will theodicy is that the vast majority of the traditions claim that children prior to the age of accountability will be saved, and they will be, if that is the case, the largest population in heaven by far, and therefore their free will did not enter at all into their salvation, and therefore the free will does not explain the existence of natural evil if the vast majority of the people saved under the current plan of salvation are saved regardless of their free will.
Well, it really depends on the strenuance as of following the rules, because if there's a heavily stringent rule, and people are being condemned, if truly it is the case, straight is the way and narrow is the gate, and few there be that find it, then when you get to heaven, you can expect almost everyone is children, because children seem to have the pass, and we've known millions of children have died, and they seem to be getting the exception card. So yeah, we could expect, maybe even as high as 80% of the population.
Oh no, my calculation is much higher. But I assume every zygote gets a soul. So if you assume every zygote gets a soul, it's much higher than 80%.
Yeah,
I think it also gives you quite a lot of issues when it comes to heaven. If you think free will exists, do you get free will in heaven? Do the angels have free will? Except Satan, of course, who must have had, or Lucifer, who must have had free will. So yes, you get free will in heaven. If you get free will in heaven, why didn't God just create everybody in heaven with free will?
Yeah.
Just cut out and that's altogether. That means suffering. The suffering is not an excuse, or free will is not an excuse for suffering. So you're back to the problem of evil again. Then, in which case, God doesn't exist, right?
And that's before you even. That's before you even interrogate how nonsensical free will philosophically is.
Right. It's completely incoherent nonsense.
Yeah, well, libertarian free will. I mean, I guess you kind of
right. Compatibilist free will, which is the kind of free will we will always have, is perfectly fine, but it doesn't match what theologians want it to be.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, the real question and the real stump for people that ask this inside of Christianity is: did we have free will before that Adam ate of the fruit? Did he have free will?
Yeah, well. There you go.
Right. So if he had free will before he ate of the tree, just don't put the tree there. And then what do we have? We have a reality in which we don't sin and we have free will and we don't have suffering. So
we don't even exist, right? Because it's just Adam still in the garden,
right.
really enjoying himself. You know what I mean? It's just the only one that's pissed off is Eve, right?
Well, Eve was made from a bone that was not a rib, so.
From the side, man. It's made from the side.
No, not the head. It's a tent pole. Where's your tent pole, Robert? Where's that tent pole?
You kill me on this one.
I've actually got it.
It's got to be true. It's the only one that makes sense.
I've got to go, but thank you so much, guys.
I
meant to come in earlier, but I only just saw you. Damn it.
Say your last words, Simos. If you're going to run, I'm going to let everybody pass around.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Thanks for joining, Simos. Have a good one, man. Later. Objective, you want anything to say, man?
Yeah, I actually got a guest scheduled, not tomorrow. I am speaking with a Catholic tomorrow. I don't know if we'll touch on free will, but I've specifically got a guest coming, a Christian coming the following Sunday to discuss free will. Excuse me. So it'll be really interesting to see how he tries to defend libertarian free will. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation. So we'll see how that goes. That'll be Sunday after tomorrow. And thanks for letting me come up and talk about Matt Baker and promote his stuff. I recommend you guys check his work out. Really good stuff. Thank you so much.
It's very good.
Hey,
see if a Catholic thinks every zygote gets a soul.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Objective. Have a good one, man. James, last words?
Oh, no, I don't have anything coming up. I've got nothing to say. It was just fun hanging out with you. Very, very brilliant people.
I appreciate it, man. I'm glad you came by. I'm thinking about adjusting my times, but I really don't want to step on Dave's. I feel like I'm going to lose a little bit of the traffic if I did. But I do think that a lot more people start to come on about this time of day is what we get. But next Saturday, we're going to have Skeptic Lou on. And then I think after that, we'll have the Mighty Filbert on. But we got to fill in a spot in there in between. James, are you interested in me hitting you up? I'm holding out for a gentleman to answer my question on it. And I think he's in chat, but if you don't answer my question, I'd love to have you on, James.
Yeah, I mean, just keep me in mind. I don't know if you have Facebook,
Definitely.
but that's our Discord.
Yeah, I do.
But
I'll reach out to you then.
All right, sounds good.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
Kurt, last words?
And nothing to flog, so I don't know.
We'll have to schedule something. I got your email. I'm gonna shoot you out an email. I would love to have that conversation with you about Mark and Marcionism.
I have a fairly evolved understanding of Mark that obviously is probably not mainstream to anyone.
Yeah, and some of the stuff is like super riveting to me. I know that it might not make for the best YouTubing, but it's super interesting to me. So we try to jazz it up as much as we can because
I'll try to make
really
it interesting.
Some interesting stuff, for sure. And Marcianite and Marcion, that is a super interesting subject there for sure.
Yeah, I can do Marcionism if you think that's more interesting to people.
Well, what do you want to do? Like Mark origin or Mark?
Oh, I want to do the genre of Mark.
The genre of Mark. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm totally for it. But the reason that I mentioned Marcionism is because we think, some scholars think that the Marcion version of Mark might be now an older version. It's getting pushed a little bit in critical scholarship.
There's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on about what the Marcionite Evangelion was. And all I will say is the Marcionite Evangelion didn't have a birth narrative, and it lacked a lot of the features, and those features are also lacked by the Gospel of Mark.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And
that'd
it's
be an interesting conversation.
So all you need to add is 3 letters to the name.
Yes, exactly. I can't wait for that conversation. We'll have to get it on the books for sure. That having been said, I think I'll wrap it up. I enjoyed everyone. I thank y'all for coming. Every first Saturday of the month, we're going to do this whole open channel thing. Otherwise, I'd like to start doing interviews. Y'all, my email is listed. Y'all can also reach out to me at Discord. I'm Raven5238. If you are interested in doing an interview with me, if you have a subject that you have some expertise about and you want to talk about that, reach out to me. I'd love to have you on. But everyone remain skeptical. There's just a lot of bullcrap